Chloe Martinez had built her entire social media career on creating controversial content. At 22 years old, she had over 2 million followers on various platforms who tuned in to watch her pull pranks, make outrageous statements, and generally push boundaries that most people wouldn't dare cross. Her motto was simple: if it doesn't get a reaction, it's not worth posting. On that crisp October morning in London, Chloe was looking for her next viral moment. She had flown to England specifically to create content around British culture, planning to visit famous landmarks and create videos that would generate clicks and engagement. Her manager had told her that anything involving the royal family or British traditions always performed well with international audiences. Standing outside Buckingham Palace with her professional camera setup, Chloe watched the steady stream of tourists taking photos with the Queen's guards. The guards stood perfectly still in their iconic red uniforms and tall black bearskin hats, maintaining their stoic expressions despite the constant attention from visitors Chloe had researched. The guards before her trip and knew they were trained not to react to tourists, no matter how annoying or inappropriate their behavior became. This gave her an idea for content that she was sure would go viral. She would push the boundaries with one of the guards and film their reaction, or lack thereof, she said to her camera, speaking to her millions of followers who would eventually watch this video. We're here at Buckingham Palace, and I'm about to do something that's going to be absolutely hilarious. These guards are supposed to be super serious and never break character, so let's see how far I can push them. Chloe approached one of the younger guards, a man who appeared to be in his early 20s. His name tag read Thompson, and he stood, with perfect military posture, his eyes fixed straight ahead. Everything about his bearing suggested years of discipline, training, and deep pride in his position. Starting with relatively mild teasing, Chloe began making jokes about his uniform, his hat, and his inability to move. Oh wow, look at this guy. He's like a real-life toy soldier. I bet he can't even blink without permission from the Queen. The guard, whose name was actually Daniel Thompson, remained perfectly still. His training had prepared him for exactly this type of situation. Tourists often tried to get reactions from the guards, and maintaining composure was considered an essential part of the job. But Chloe wasn't satisfied with his lack of response. She had promised her followers something entertaining, and a guard simply standing there wasn't going to generate the engagement she needed. She decided to escalate her approach. I bet this guy has no personality at all, she said loudly, making sure her camera captured everything. He's probably never had a girlfriend because he's too boring to talk to. Look at him just standing there like a statue. What kind of life is this? Daniel felt his jaw tighten slightly, but he maintained his professional demeanor. He had a girlfriend, actually, Sarah, whom he planned to propose to next month. They had been together for 3 years, and she was incredibly proud of his service as a Queen's guard. But he couldn't respond to this. Strangers' taunts without facing serious disciplinary action. Chloe noticed the slight change in Daniel's expression and felt encouraged. Oh, I think I'm getting to him. Look, guys, I think the robot soldier has feelings after all. She began making increasingly personal and insulting comments, questioning his intelligence, his career choice, and his worth. As a person, the crowd of tourists around them started to feel uncomfortable, some people whispering that she was going too far. Daniel's training included psychological preparation for dealing with difficult people, but nothing had quite prepared him for this level of sustained personal attack. The young woman seemed determined to humiliate him publicly, and her camera was recording everything for what he assumed would be shared online. I bet his family is so embarrassed by him, Chloe continued, her voice getting louder and more mocking. Imagine having a son who just stands around all day playing dress-up. He's like a grown man playing pretend soldier. This comment hit Daniel particularly hard. His father had been a decorated military officer who had died serving overseas when Daniel was 16. Following in his father's footsteps by becoming a Queen's Guard had been Daniel's way of honoring his memory and serving his country with the same dedication. Chloe could see that her comments were affecting the guard more than he was letting on. His breathing had changed slightly, and there was a tension around his eyes that hadn't been there before. She felt like she was on the verge of getting the dramatic reaction that would make her video go viral. Maybe I should call his mommy and tell her that her little boy is out here playing soldier, she taunted. I bet she cries every night knowing she raised such a failure. The crowd around them had grown larger, with many people pulling out their phones to record what was happening. Some tourists looked disgusted by Chloe's behavior, while others seemed entertained by the spectacle. Few people called out for her to stop. She ignored them completely. Daniel was fighting every instinct to respond to the attacks on his character and his family. His hands were clenched into fists behind his back, and he was using every technique he had learned for maintaining composure under pressure, but this young woman seemed determined to break him down publicly. What neither Chloe nor Daniel knew was that this encounter was about to take a turn that neither of them could have predicted, setting in motion a series of events that would change both of their lives in ways they never could have imagined. After 10 minutes of relentless mocking, Chloe was beginning to feel frustrated that the guard wasn't giving her the dramatic reaction she needed for viral content. Daniel had maintained his composure admirably, but she could see the strain in his posture and the slight tremor in his hands. "You know what?" Chloe said, stepping even closer to Daniel and speaking directly into her camera. "I think this guy might actually be a robot. Look, he's not even human enough to defend himself. When someone calls out how pathetic his life is..." Just as Chloe was preparing to launch into another round of insults, she noticed a commotion behind her. An elderly woman in the crowd had collapsed, clutching her chest and gasping for air. People were screaming for help, but in the chaos, no one seemed to know what to do. Daniel saw the emergency developing and faced an impossible choice. His training demanded that he remain at his post no matter what happened around him. But his human conscience and basic medical training were telling him that someone's life was in danger. Without hesitation, Daniel broke protocol and rushed to the fallen woman, immediately dropping to his knees beside her. "I'm trained in emergency medical response," he announced to the crowd. "Please step back and give her room to breathe." Chloe stood frozen, her camera still rolling, as she watched the same guard she had been mocking transform into someone completely different. Daniel was checking the woman's pulse, loosening her clothing to help her breathe, and speaking to her in a calm, reassuring voice. "Ma'am, my name is Daniel. I'm going to help you. Can you tell me your name?" he asked gently, while simultaneously signaling to nearby security personnel to call for medical assistance. The woman, who appeared to be in her 70s, managed to whisper, "Margaret, it's my heart. I have medication in my purse." Daniel quickly located Margaret's purse and found her heart medication, helping her take it while supporting her head and monitoring her breathing. His movements were confident and professional, clearly demonstrating extensive medical training that went far beyond basic first aid. Chloe watched in amazement as other tourists gathered around, offering assistance and expressing gratitude to Daniel for his quick response. The same people who had been watching her mock him minutes earlier were now praising his professionalism and compassion. "You're going to be okay, Margaret," Daniel said softly. "The ambulance is on its way. Just focus on breathing slowly and staying calm." Margaret looked up at Daniel with tears in her eyes. "Thank you, young man. You saved my life. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been here." As the ambulance arrived and paramedics took over Margaret's care, Daniel prepared to return to his post, knowing he would face serious consequences for abandoning his position. But before he could move, Margaret grabbed his hand. She said weakly, "I want everyone to know what this brave young man did for me." It was then that Chloe realized Margaret wasn't just any tourist. The way the palace security personnel were treating her, the deference shown by the paramedics, and the expensive jewelry she wore suggested she was someone of significant importance. Margaret turned to the crowd and, despite her weakened condition, spoke with clear authority. "This guard broke protocol to save my life. He showed courage, compassion, and excellent medical skills. I will personally ensure that his superiors know about his heroic actions today." Daniel helped Margaret onto the stretcher, still holding her hand reassuringly. "Ma'am, I just did what anyone would do. I hope you feel better soon." As the ambulance departed, Daniel finally turned back toward his post, expecting to face disciplinary action from his commanding officers. But instead, he found Captain Williams waiting for him with an expression that was hard to read. Captain Williams said formally, "You abandoned your post without authorization." Daniel stood at attention. "Yes, sir. I accept full responsibility for my actions." However, Captain Williams continued, "You also potentially saved the life of Lady Margaret Thornton, who happens to be a close friend of the royal family and a significant patron of military charities." Chloe, who had been filming everything, in stunned silence, suddenly realized the magnitude of what had just happened. The guard she had been mocking as a failure and embarrassment. He had just saved the life of someone connected to the very royal family he served. Captain Williams looked at the crowd of tourists, many of whom were still recording with their phones. "Lady Margaret has already called from the ambulance to request a commendation for Guardsman Thompson. His quick thinking and medical expertise likely prevented a tragedy." Daniel looked shocked. "Sir, I was just doing what seemed right," which is exactly the kind of judgment and character we value in the Queen's Guard, Captain Williams replied. "Your actions today demonstrated that you understand the difference between following rules and serving people." Chloe felt a growing sense of shame as she realized what her video now contained. Instead of footage of her humiliating a guard, she had recorded evidence of her own cruelty toward someone who turned out to be genuinely heroic. The crowd began to disperse. But several tourists approached Daniel to thank him personally and express their admiration for his actions. Many mentioned that they had witnessed the entire incident, including Chloe's behavior before the emergency. An older gentleman shook Daniel's hand firmly. "Son, I'm a retired military officer, and what you did today made me proud to see the uniform. You showed real character under pressure." A young mother with 2 small children spoke up as well. "My children saw everything that happened. Thank you for showing them what it means to put others first, even when people are being unkind to you." Chloe realized that her carefully planned content had backfired spectacularly. Instead of creating a video that made the guard look foolish, she had documented her own cruel behavior towards someone who had just demonstrated remarkable character and heroism. As Daniel returned to his post, he caught Chloe's eye for just a moment. There was no anger in his expression, no desire for revenge or vindication. He simply nodded slightly and resumed his professional stance, as if the entire incident had been just another part of his duty. But Chloe couldn't shake the image of Daniel's transformation from the stoic guard she had mocked to the compassionate hero who had saved Margaret's life. She began to understand that she had completely misjudged not just Daniel, but the entire nature of what it meant to serve others with dignity and honor. Back in her hotel room that evening, Chloe sat staring at her laptop screen, watching the raw footage she had captured outside Buckingham Palace. The video told a story she hadn't intended to create, one that made her look cruel and ignorant. While showcasing the guard's genuine heroism, she had originally planned to edit the footage to focus on her funny interactions with the stoic guard, cutting out anything that didn't support her narrative. But now, as she watched Daniel's transformation from her target to Margaret's savior, she realized she couldn't manipulate this story without confronting some uncomfortable truths about herself. Chloe's phone had been buzzing constantly with notifications. Several tourists had already posted their own videos of the incident on social media, and the story was beginning to spread. But these videos told the complete story, her mockery followed by Daniel's heroic response to the medical emergency. Comments on these other videos were overwhelmingly critical of her behavior. People were calling her actions disgusting, shameful, and a perfect example of what's wrong with social media culture. Many expressed admiration for Daniel's professionalism in the face of her taunts and his immediate response to help. Margaret, one comment particularly stung. This influencer spent 10 minutes trying to humiliate a man who turned out to be more heroic in 2 minutes than she'll ever be in her entire career. Chloe tried to focus on editing her video, but she kept returning to the moment when Daniel had rushed to help Margaret. The expression on his face had completely changed from stoic endurance of her abuse to genuine concern and compassion for a stranger in need. She found herself researching Daniel's background and learning about the Queen's Guard training. These weren't just ceremonial soldiers playing dress-up, as she had mockingly suggested. They were highly trained military personnel, many with combat experience and extensive education in everything from emergency medicine to counterterrorism. Her phone rang, interrupting her research. It was her manager, Rick, calling from Los Angeles. "Chloe, what the hell happened in London today?" Rick's voice was tense. "I'm seeing videos all over social media of you harassing some guard, and it doesn't look good." Chloe sighed. "Rick, the situation got complicated. The guard ended up being a hero, and now I look like the villain." "You need to do damage control immediately," Rick said. "Post your version of the video. Spin it somehow. Maybe focus on how the guard broke protocol. Make it about security concerns." But as Rick suggested ways to manipulate the narrative, Chloe found herself feeling increasingly uncomfortable. She was looking at footage of Daniel gently helping Margaret take her medication, speaking to her with such kindness and professionalism, and she couldn't imagine turning that into negative content. "Rick, I don't think I can post this video," she said quietly. "What do you mean you can't post it? This is your job, Chloe. Controversy creates engagement, and engagement creates revenue. You can't let some random soldier make you go soft." Ending the call with Rick, Chloe continued researching Daniel and the Queen's Guard. She discovered that many guards had advanced degrees and military honors. Daniel himself had earned a degree in emergency medical services before joining the military, which explained his expert response to Margaret's heart episode. She also learned about the intense psychological training guards received to maintain composure under pressure. Daniel's ability to ignore her insults wasn't weakness or robotic behavior, it was remarkable self-discipline and professionalism. The more Chloe learned, the more ashamed she became of her behavior. She had attacked Daniel's character, intelligence, and family without knowing anything about him, except that he wore a uniform she found amusing around midnight. Chloe made a decision that surprised even herself. Instead of posting the video she had originally planned, she began writing a different kind of post, one that would require her to admit she had been wrong. She started by acknowledging her behavior. "Today I went to Buckingham Palace planning to create content by mocking one of the Queen's guards. I thought it would be funny to try to get a reaction from someone trained not to respond to tourists." The post continued. "What happened next taught me something important about judging people without knowing anything about them. The guard I was mocking turned out to be someone with genuine heroism and medical training, who saved an elderly woman's life right in front of me." Chloe hesitated before typing the next part. "I spent 10 minutes insulting this man's intelligence, character, and family, and when he had the chance to make me look foolish in return, he ignored me completely and focused on helping someone who needed medical attention." Writing the post was harder than creating any content she had ever produced. Admitting error publicly went against everything she had been taught about maintaining her brand and online persona. But as she wrote, Chloe realized she was documenting something important, not just about Daniel's character, but about her own capacity for growth and self-reflection. "I realized today that real strength isn't about getting reactions from people or creating controversy for entertainment. Real strength is what I saw from Guardsman Thompson, staying calm under pressure, helping others without expecting recognition, and showing grace to people who don't deserve it." The final paragraph was the most difficult to write. "I owe Guardsman Thompson an apology for my behavior today. He showed me what real service and character look like, and I responded by trying to humiliate him for content. I was wrong, and I'm sorry." Before she could change her mind, Chloe posted the message across all her social media platforms. Almost immediately, her phone started buzzing with responses from followers who seemed shocked by her admission of fault. Some responses were supportive, praising her for taking responsibility. Others were critical, suggesting she was only apologizing because she had been caught behaving badly. But Chloe found she didn't care about the mixed reactions as much as she thought she would. For the first time in her social media career, she had posted something that felt genuinely honest rather than calculated for maximum engagement. As she prepared for bed, Chloe found herself thinking not about her follower count or engagement metrics, but about the look of genuine concern on Daniel's face as he had helped Margaret. She wondered if she had ever shown that kind of authentic care for another person, and she didn't like the answer. 3 days after posting her apology, Chloe was surprised to receive an unexpected phone call. The voice on the other end was cultured and elderly, with the unmistakable accent of British aristocracy. "Miss Martinez, this is Lady Margaret Thornton. I believe you were present when I had my heart episode at Buckingham Palace." Chloe nearly dropped her phone. "Lady Margaret, how are you feeling? Are you okay?" "I'm doing much better, thank you. Entirely thanks to the quick actions of Guardsman Thompson. But I'm calling because I've seen your social media posts about what happened that day." Chloe felt her stomach drop. She had been dreading this conversation, knowing that her behavior had been witnessed by someone who was clearly important and well-connected. "Lady Margaret, I am so sorry for my behavior that day. I know what I did was wrong, and my dear," Lady Margaret interrupted gently, "I'm not calling to scold you. I'm calling because I was impressed by your apology. It takes courage, too. Admit when we've been wrong, especially so publicly." Chloe was stunned. "You're not angry with me?" Lady Margaret chuckled softly. "Oh, I was quite angry at first. But then I watched your apology video, and I saw something that reminded me of myself at your age. Sometimes we need to make mistakes to learn who we really want to be." The conversation continued for nearly an hour, with Lady Margaret sharing stories about her own youthful mistakes and the lessons she had learned from them. She explained that she had been involved in military charities for decades and had met many young people who had found their way after making poor choices. "Miss Martinez, I have a proposition for you," Lady Margaret said. "I run a foundation that supports military families and veterans. We're always looking for ways to reach younger audiences and show them what military service really means. Would you be interested in volunteering with us?" Chloe was shocked. "You want me to volunteer? After what I did?" "Precisely because of what you did," Lady Margaret replied. "You've shown that you can learn and grow from your mistakes. That's exactly the kind of authenticity that young people need to see." The next day, Chloe found herself at the Foundation's headquarters in central London, meeting with Lady Margaret and her staff. Organizations supported families of military personnel, provided scholarships for veterans, and ran educational programs about the realities of military service. "Many young people have the same misconceptions about military service that you had," explained Sarah Walsh, the Foundation's director. "They see the ceremonies and uniforms and think it's all about tradition and pageantry. They don't understand the real skills, sacrifice, and service involved." Lady Margaret showed Chloe around the facility, introducing her to veterans and military families who benefited from the Foundation's programs. Each person had a story that challenged Chloe's previous assumptions about military life. She met James Fletcher, a former Queen's Guard who had served 3 tours in Afghanistan before taking the ceremonial position. His stoic composure during guard duty had been earned through experiences that most people couldn't imagine. "The ceremonial duties are actually some of the most challenging aspects of military service," James explained. "It requires incredible mental discipline to maintain composure while representing your country, especially when people are trying to provoke you." Chloe thought about Daniel's restraint in the face of her mockery and began to understand it in a completely different light. She also met Maria Santos, whose husband had been a royal guard before being deployed overseas. Maria struggled to support their 2 young children while he was away, relying on the Foundation for both financial assistance and emotional support. "People see the uniforms and think our husbands are just playing soldier," Maria said. "They don't realize these men are highly trained professionals who often serve in combat zones. The ceremonial duties are just one small part of what they do." As the week progressed, Chloe found herself genuinely invested in learning about the Foundation's work. She started helping with social media campaigns, using her skills to create content that educated young people about military service in a respectful way. Her first project was a video series called Behind the Uniform, featuring interviews with guards and veterans who shared their real stories. The content was completely different from anything she had created before, educational, respectful, and focused on highlighting others rather than herself. The response from her followers was mixed. Some were confused by the dramatic change in her content style, while others praised her for using her platform more responsibly. Chloe lost some followers who preferred her controversial content, but she gained others who appreciated her new approach. 2 weeks into her volunteer work, Lady Margaret arranged for something Chloe hadn't expected: a chance to meet Daniel Thompson in person. "Guardsman Thompson has agreed to meet with you," Lady Margaret explained. "He's curious about your foundation work and wanted to thank you personally for your apology." Chloe felt nervous as she waited in the foundation's meeting room. She had apologized publicly, but she hadn't faced Daniel directly since that day at Buckingham Palace. She wondered if he harbored any resentment about her behavior. When Daniel entered the room in civilian clothes, Chloe was struck by how different he seemed. Without his formal uniform and ceremonial composure, he appeared younger and more approachable, though still carrying himself with military bearing. "Miss Martinez," Daniel said, extending his hand with a genuine smile, "Lady Margaret tells me you've been doing excellent work with the Foundation." Chloe shook his hand, feeling the weight of the moment. "Guardsman Thompson, I owe you a personal apology. What I did that day was inexcusable. I judged you without knowing anything about who you are or what you do." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "I appreciate your apology, and I've seen the work you're doing now. That means more to me than any words could." They spent the next hour talking about the Foundation's programs and Daniel's experiences as a Queen's Guard. Chloe learned that he had joined the military after his father's death, viewing service as a way to honor his father's memory and contribute something meaningful to society. "The day you were filming me," Daniel said, "I was thinking about my father and what he would have wanted me to do. He always taught me that how we respond to difficult people says more about us than about them." Chloe felt a pang of guilt. "So sorry I brought up your family in such a cruel way. I had no right to say those things. You didn't know my story then," Daniel replied. "But you've taken the time to learn now, and that shows real character growth. That's what matters." As their conversation continued, Chloe realized that Daniel harbored no ill will toward her. He had genuinely forgiven her behavior and was more interested in her current efforts than her past mistakes. By the end of the meeting, Chloe felt something she hadn't experienced in years: genuine respect for someone else's character and a desire to live up to that example. 6 months after the incident at Buckingham Palace, Chloe's life had transformed in ways she never could have imagined. Her social media following had changed dramatically. She had lost followers who preferred controversy, but gained others who appreciated her educational content about military service and veterans. Issues: the Behind the Uniform series had become unexpectedly popular, garnering millions of views and positive responses from military families around the world. Chloe had interviewed dozens of service members, sharing their real stories and challenging common misconceptions about military life. Her work with Lady Margaret's Foundation had evolved into a full-time commitment. Chloe had officially left her career as a controversial content creator and taken a position as the Foundation's social media director, using her skills to raise awareness and funds for military families. "Chloe, I need to show you something," Lady Margaret said one morning. Calling her into the office with obvious excitement, Lady Margaret handed her an official-looking letter with a royal seal. "This came from Buckingham Palace this morning. It seems your work hasn't gone unnoticed at the highest levels." Chloe read the letter in amazement. The palace was requesting her assistance with a special project, creating educational content for young people about the role and responsibilities of the Royal Guards. The initiative was part of a broader effort to improve public understanding of military service. "They specifically mentioned your transformation from critic to advocate," Lady Margaret explained. "Your unique perspective, having been on both sides of the misunderstanding, makes you particularly qualified to bridge that gap." The project would involve working directly with the Queen's Guard units, creating behind-the-scenes content that showed the reality of their training duties and service. Chloe would have unprecedented access to document aspects of Royal Guard life that the public rarely saw. Her first day at the palace for the project was surreal. Walking through the same gates where she had once created controversial content, Chloe now carried official credentials and a genuine mission to educate and inspire. Captain Williams, whom she had met briefly on the day of the incident, greeted her professionally. "Miss Martinez, we've seen your recent work with military families. Your approach to storytelling has impressed our senior staff." The captain led her through areas of the palace grounds that tourists never saw: training facilities, briefing rooms, and living quarters where guards prepared for their duties. Chloe was struck by the professionalism and dedication evident in every aspect of their operations. "Many people think our job is just standing still and looking impressive," explained Sergeant Roberts, one of the guards participating in the project. "But we're responsible for the security of some of the most important people in the world. Every guard here has extensive military training and ongoing education." Chloe spent hours interviewing guards about their backgrounds, motivations, and experiences. She learned about their rigorous selection process, their combat training, the mental discipline required to maintain ceremonial composure while staying alert to potential threats. One particularly moving interview was with Guard Emma Phillips, who had served 2 tours in Iraq. Before joining the Queen's Guard, Emma spoke about the challenge of transitioning from active combat to ceremonial duties, and how both roles required different but equally demanding skills. "People sometimes think the ceremonial duties are easier than combat deployment," Emma explained. "But standing guard for hours while maintaining perfect composure, staying alert to every potential threat, and representing your country with dignity, that takes a different kind of strength." During her second week on the project, Chloe was surprised to see Daniel Thompson enter the briefing room. He'd been selected as one of the primary subjects for her documentary series. Given his exemplary service record and his unique connection to the project's origins. "Hello, Chloe," Daniel said warmly. "I'm looking forward to working with you on this. Your recent content has been really impressive." Their professional relationship had evolved into genuine friendship over the months. Since their first meeting at the foundation, Daniel had even attended some of Chloe's foundation events, sharing his experiences with young people who were considering military service. "Daniel, I have to ask you something," Chloe said as they prepared for his interview. "Do you ever think about that day when I was mocking you? Do you regret how you handled it?" Daniel considered the question carefully. "I think about it sometimes, but not with regret. That day taught me something important about the impact we can have on others, even when we don't realize it." "What do you mean?" "Your behavior that day was obviously hurtful," Daniel explained, "but it also led to your transformation and all the good work you're doing now. If I had broken character and responded angrily, would you have learned the same lessons?" Chloe hadn't considered this perspective before. "You think your restraint that day contributed to my change?" "I think everything that happened that day, including the medical emergency, was part of a larger experience that changed both of us. You learned about the real nature of service, and I learned about the power of maintaining dignity under pressure." As they filmed Daniel's interview, Chloe was struck by his continued humility and thoughtfulness. Despite receiving commendations for his actions during Margaret's medical emergency, he consistently deflected praise. It focused on the importance of the Queen's Guard mission. The documentary series launched 3 months later with unprecedented success. The content generated millions of views and sparked widespread discussion about military service, respect for those in uniform, and the power of personal transformation. Major news outlets picked up the story of Chloe's journey from controversial influencer to military advocate. She appeared on television programs and was invited to speak at universities about the importance of understanding before judging and the possibility of meaningful change. One of the most impactful moments came during a live television interview when the host asked Chloe about her motivation for such a dramatic career change. "I learned that real influence isn't about getting reactions or creating controversy," Chloe explained. "Real influence is about using your platform to help others understand something important, to bridge divides, and to highlight the good that exists in people." The interviewer pressed further. "But don't you miss the excitement and engagement that controversial content generated?" Chloe smiled, thinking about the thank you letters she received from military families and the young people who had been inspired to consider service after watching her content. "The engagement I get now is different," she said. "Instead of people watching to be entertained by conflict, they're watching to learn something meaningful. Instead of creating division, I'm helping create understanding. That feels much better than anything I did before." As the interview concluded, Chloe reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought her to this point. A moment of cruel mockery had somehow led to meaningful work, genuine friendships, and a sense of purpose she had never experienced as a controversial content creator. One year after the incident at Buckingham Palace, Chloe found herself standing in the same spot where she had once mocked Daniel Thompson. But this time, she was there for a very different purpose: the official launch of the Understanding Service educational program, which had grown from her documentary series into a comprehensive initiative supported by the royal family. The program had been implemented in schools across the UK and several other countries, teaching young people about military service, respect for those in uniform, and the importance of understanding before judging. Chloe had become the unexpected face of this movement, sharing her story of transformation at educational conferences around the world. Lady Margaret stood beside her, looking remarkably healthy and energetic despite her heart episode the previous year. "My dear, do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't had my medical emergency that day?" Chloe considered the question. "I think about it often. If you hadn't needed help that day, I probably would have posted that horrible video and continued down the same destructive path. Your emergency forced me to see Daniel's true character, and that changed everything." The ceremony that morning was attended by military officials, educators, and representatives from veterans organizations. But the most meaningful moment for Chloe came when Daniel arrived in his dress uniform, accompanied by a young woman with a warm smile and a diamond ring on her finger. "Chloe, I'd like you to meet my fiancée, Sarah," Daniel said proudly. "Sarah, this is Chloe Martinez, the woman I've told you so much about." Sarah shook Chloe's hand warmly. "It's wonderful to finally meet you. Daniel speaks about your work with such admiration. He says you've helped more people understand military service than anyone he knows." Chloe felt touched by the compliment, but also humbled. "I'm just trying to make up for my initial ignorance. Your fiancé showed me what real character looks like." During the ceremony, Chloe was invited to speak about her journey and the impact of the educational program. Standing at the podium, looking out at an audience that included military personnel, educators, and young people, she felt the weight of how much her life had changed. "A year ago, I stood in this exact spot with a very different purpose," Chloe began. "I came here to create content by mocking someone I didn't understand, someone I had judged based on nothing but assumptions and stereotypes." She paused, looking directly at Daniel, who gave her an encouraging nod. "What I learned that day changed my life completely. I learned that the person I was mocking was actually a highly trained professional with medical skills, military experience, and more character in his little finger than I had in my entire body." The audience listened intently as Chloe described her transformation from controversial influencer to military advocate. She spoke about the importance of looking beyond surface appearances and taking time to understand people before judging them. "The most important lesson I learned is that real strength isn't about getting reactions from people or creating conflict for entertainment. Real strength is what I witnessed from Guardsman Thompson, maintaining dignity under pressure, helping others without expecting recognition, and showing grace to people who don't deserve it." After her speech, Chloe was approached by several young people who had been inspired by her story. A teenage girl named Emma told her, "Your videos help me understand that my brother isn't just playing dress-up when he serves. He's doing something really important." A young man named Marcus shared how the educational program had influenced his decision to consider military service. "Before watching your content, I thought military service was just about following orders. I understand it's about serving something bigger than yourself." These conversations reminded Chloe why her transformation had been so important. Her original video mocking Daniel would have reinforced negative stereotypes and encouraged others to disrespect service members. Instead, her journey of understanding had inspired thousands of young people to view military service with respect and consideration. Later that afternoon, Chloe, Daniel, and Sarah had lunch together at a quiet restaurant near the palace. The conversation was easy and friendly, a stark contrast to the tension and conflict of their first encounter. "Daniel, can I ask you something personal?" Chloe said. "That day when I was saying horrible things about your family, what were you actually thinking?" Daniel smiled, squeezing Sarah's hand. "I was thinking about my father and what he would have wanted me to do. He always taught me that responding to cruelty with cruelty only creates more problems. He said the best way to deal with difficult people is to show them something better." Sarah added, "When Daniel told me about that day, I was so proud of how he handled it. He could have easily embarrassed you or made you look foolish, but he chose to maintain his dignity instead. Chloe nodded, understanding more clearly how Daniel's restraint had actually been an act of kindness toward her, even though she hadn't deserved it at the time. "There's something I want to tell both of you," Chloe said. "Next month, I'm being honored by the Veterans Education Foundation for my work with military families. They're giving me an award for transformational advocacy." Daniel and Sarah congratulated her enthusiastically, but Chloe continued, "I want you both to know that I don't see this as my achievement. Everything good that's come from this started with Daniel's example of how to serve others with dignity." As they finished lunch, Chloe reflected on the unexpected friendship that had grown from such a problematic beginning. She had gained not just Daniel's forgiveness, but his genuine respect and friendship. That evening, Chloe posted a final video about her transformation journey. Instead of her usual studio setup, she filmed herself standing outside Buckingham Palace at sunset. "A year ago, I came to this place to create content that would mock and demean someone I didn't understand," she said to the camera. "Today I was here to launch an educational program that has reached over 1 million young people around the world." She paused, looking at the palace gates where everything had changed. "I learned that the most powerful content isn't about getting reactions or creating controversy. It's about helping people understand each other better, building bridges instead of walls, and using whatever influence you have to highlight the good in others." The video concluded with footage from the day's ceremony, showing young people learning about military service, veterans sharing their stories, and the genuine connections being formed between different communities. As Chloe walked back to her hotel, she thought about the ripple effects of that single day a year ago. Her moment of cruelty had led to personal transformation, which had led to educational programs that were now influencing thousands of young people around the world. Most importantly, she had learned that redemption was possible for anyone willing to acknowledge their mistakes, learn from them, and commit to doing better. The guard she had once mocked had become her teacher, showing her what it really meant to serve others with honor and dignity. Sometimes, Chloe realized, our worst moments can become the foundation for our best selves. If we're brave enough to learn from them and change,